During the Cold War, Germany was divided into East and West. The eastern part was called the German Democratic Republic, or GDR for short. It was a socialist country with a centralized command economy. The western part was the Federal Republic of Germany, a democracy with a capitalist market economy. The border between them is frequently called the Iron Curtain because it was developed into one of the most fortified borders in the world. The term Iron Curtain was used by Winston Churchill in his speech in 1946 at a time when Eastern and Western Europe were starting to drift apart as a result of the early Cold War. Now, when you ask people to imagine how the Iron Curtain looked like, they are most likely to describe the Berlin Wall. So the Berlin Wall really was iconographic for the Iron Curtain. The wall was built in 1961 and cut through the former German capital, Berlin. It was built because the socialist East German government worried that too many of its citizens were migrating westward to pursue a different life than was possible in the GDR. But the Iron Curtain did not just consist of the Berlin Wall. There was also a long border between the two German states that was called the inter-German border. This border was over 850 miles long and ran mostly through countryside. From 1952 forward, it was becoming increasingly fortified. First, just a line in the sand, if you will, but soon a simple fence, and then a more elaborate fence and watchtowers paired with diligent border guarding, etc. And then more and more military-grade features were added until the inter-German border had turned into a deadly obstacle to anyone who sought to leave East Germany. The history of this border has been studied in many contexts. Scholars have asked how it changed the life of East Germans to be walled in. They have looked at the border as a military infrastructure. They have also investigated in which ways the border influenced the relationship between the two German states. And I propose that we think of the border in environmental terms as well. State borders have effects on the natural environment where they are placed, especially a heavily fortified border like the Iron Curtain. Think of it this way. If you put 850 miles of military-grade hardware into the landscape, what will this do? What is the ecological footprint of such a structure? This is a very pertinent question right now for the border wall between the United States and Mexico. During the time the inter-German border was constructed and made ever more elaborate, the Iron Curtain clearly degraded landscape. And with the ground ripped up and corridors cut through thick forests, contemporary observers in the 1960s thought of the border as a scar in the landscape. But by the late 1970s, ecologists discovered a new side to this edifice. A narrow sliver of land on either side of the border fence was teeming with wildlife. Because some of the land on the border was not accessible to humans, animals, especially birds, had withdrawn to this area. They were displaced elsewhere by high-intensity farming, but in the border strip, they could still build their nests and remain relatively undisturbed. After 1989, conservationists made major efforts to protect this sliver of land, although the border infrastructure itself was, of course, dismantled when the GDR collapsed and both Germanys unified. Today, this strip of land is called the Green Belt, and it is one of the best-known German nature conservation projects.